We are about to get jolted, folks. Big changes are coming to the weather forecast that many of you will not like at all. Some of you will see tornadoes, large hail, and damaging winds over the next couple of days, and a radio blackout. That's right, we've got a radio blackout to talk about. The sun is awake. X-class solar flares are coming off. We're going to look at all of that, plus take a look at your weekend forecast and see what's in store, and a look around the corner at the long range. So folks, we've got a lot to get into today. This is Cold Rain's Weather World, and I'm going to break it all down like a fraction for you. We're going to start with the severe weather threat, and yeah, we've got a pretty large area of severe weather expected this afternoon from central Michigan down through Chicago, St. Louis, Missouri, down into Norman, Oklahoma, Dallas, Texas, up through most of Arkansas into Nashville, Tennessee, Louisville, Kentucky, Columbus, Ohio, under the gun for high winds and large hail. The tornado threat predominantly up here from Lansing, Michigan, down in toward Chicago, back in toward most of Indiana. Enhanced level 3 risk extends all the way into the Boot Hill of Missouri and western Kentucky as well. So we're going to take a look at this and see what's going on. But we've got an all hazards day. Low pressure is going to be moving into the Great Lakes, bringing turning of the winds with height. We've got a strong low-level jet. It's going to fuel wind damage where line segments and clusters form, and we're going to see those form predominantly through Missouri up into Indiana, into western Ohio through the afternoon and evening. Hail is also a threat where we have unstable air and cooling of the air with height. Looking at what's driving this, we always start with instability to see if there is enough instability, and boy, there sure is. Look at all of this unstable air. We've been watching this over the last few days. The whole entire eastern half of the country, with the exception of the Northeast, is unstable. So we're going to see the potential for pop-up showers and thunderstorms in a lot of places, but the severe weather threat is going to be maximized where we have the best dynamics overlapping the best instability, and that's going to be up from the Great Lakes along a boundary back in toward Oklahoma and Texas. And through this afternoon, you can see that instability sort of fire up 3,000 joules per kilogram in that area somewhere, and then that will diminish overnight as nocturnal cooling takes over, and then tomorrow the instability fires back up again as we have a moist air mass. It's going to get hot, particularly out here along the northeast and down into the upper southeast. That's where the frontal boundary is going to be moving, interacting with that instability, and so our severe weather threat is going to shift out there tomorrow, but still could see thunderstorms develop across much of the southeast tomorrow as well. Here's the low-level jet. This is important because what happens is this low-pressure system, let's draw this in a better color here so we can see it better. This low-pressure system is sitting right here. You can see these close contours. That's going to zoom off toward Michigan later today. What a terrible arrow that is. And these bright colors represent a 40, 50 knot low-level jet. And so over the course of the afternoon, that low-level jet is going to push in toward Chicago, in toward Indianapolis, up in toward Lansing, Michigan, and places like that, in toward Columbus, Ohio. You can see that around the winds turning around that low pressure zone as we get on into the early evening hours. And that's important because these thunderstorms, as they build up and organize, downdrafts come out of those thunderstorms and they push that wind that's about 5,000 feet off the surface down to the ground. It speeds up and you get these these big outflow boundaries that just come through with wind damage, and that's what we're going to see as we start to see some organization later today. Here's that spin, that little low pressure working through close to the St. Louis area by midday today, pushing a line of thunderstorms into Chicago, starting to see thunderstorms break out there. As we get on into the early afternoon hours, 2, 3 o'clock, we're seeing thunderstorms break out in Indiana. Any of these cells that are moving through Chicago and toward Indianapolis could produce spin and a tornado or two. So watch out as we get on into early to mid-afternoon, and then storms starting to break out back in Oklahoma and Arkansas as well. We don't have as much shear down there, but we've got more instability, so still could see a severe threat down there as well. As we get on in toward the late afternoon toward early evening hours, that line is zipping through Indianapolis into Ohio, up into Michigan as well, trailing back in toward Kentucky, toward Tennessee, and we're still seeing thunderstorms fire up in Oklahoma as well. So that'll all continue to push east. Overnight, eventually, as we get toward and beyond midnight, that will diminish, but we're going to see a late evening threat into Ohio as well, and also down here in Oklahoma toward the border down toward Wichita Falls, and getting close to Dallas by the time we get on into the early evening hours around 8 p.m. Central Time. So that's what our severe weather threat looks like today. We could also see a few isolated severe weather reports up here in North Dakota and Minnesota as well, folks. And tomorrow afternoon, our severe weather threat shifts east over here from the mid-Atlantic, or from the northeast down into the mid-Atlantic, but anywhere along the Appalachians into the upper southeast. Also, the upper plains in the Midwest could see an isolated severe thunderstorm event with wind and hail possible. Tornadoes possible where the best shear is up toward the northeast. Wind, of course, is also a threat along that frontal boundary. We're going to see plenty of instability to create, robust convection, can make use of some of the low-level winds. And then hail is also a threat as well, but not as quite as big as, or big of a threat as today. And then as we look on out in toward Friday, severe weather threat comes back again into the upper plains, upper Midwest, into the Great Lakes region as another piece of energy rotates around a ridge. And we're going to look at that ridge here in a minute, because that's going to play a prominent role in our weather as we go on through the next several days. And that brings us into our Weather IQ question today. It's going to continue the same theme of earthquake-related questions that we've seen the last couple of days. But here's your question for today. What is the point on the Earth's surface directly above an earthquake's origin called? The hypocenter, the fault line, the crust zone, or the epicenter? If you know the answer, type it in the comments. If you don't, simply hang out till the end of the show, and I'll tell you exactly what it is. So we're going to take a look at the rest of the work week forecast. We're going to start with the satellite imagery that overlays the lightning display so we can get an idea of where convection is. So you would imagine, as I would, this is where the thunderstorms are, and probably between these thunderstorms there are plenty of showers, and we'll see that on the radar here in a minute to be so. But you can see that little spin that we were talking about here, right here over Missouri, right in the middle of the state. That's going to move off and play a good role this afternoon, but lots of cloud cover over the northeast through the Great Lakes, back into the Tennessee Valley, lower plains here, you can call it lower Mississippi Valley, but it's parts of the southeast, including here where I am in Morganton, North Carolina. Very nice, clear, hot, sunny, humid. Much of the western U.S. is under full sun today, so that's nice out there. Taking a look here at the actual radar, see several clusters of thunderstorms, Nebraska into South Dakota, Iowa. You're seeing some rough weather this morning out here in northern Missouri, where that low pressure is getting its act together. Oklahoma, seeing some flooding out of some of these, down toward central Indiana, toward Indianapolis, into West Virginia, up into Michigan, even over here just west of Boston, seeing some showers and thunderstorms around this morning. The alerts map shows heat advisories all the way up here toward Boston, where it's going to feel like 100 in the next couple of days. Flood watches and warnings are up here in Kansas and Oklahoma, where we've just seen round after round of thunderstorms. These MCSs have moved through the last couple of days, bringing plenty of rain, and some of these rivers are in flood stage, and we're seeing more flash flooding occurring this morning. Out here in the desert Southwest, you guys are not getting a break from the heat. Hundreds, that's what it's been. And again, baking out here under excessive heat warnings over the next couple of days, where we could see temperatures surging around 115 or higher than that. Red flag warnings for winds gusting into the 30s and 40s in Utah, and that's what we've got going on there. Air quality is not too much of a problem. We've got a few areas of low air quality in toward the moderate range as we get on out here into Salt Lake City, Phoenix, and a little bit worse down here in Los Angeles, where it typically is. So if you have any sort of air sensitivity, asthma, things like that, pay attention to that. This afternoon, there's our low pressure here in Missouri getting its act together. Going to zoom off to the Great Lakes, bringing some flooding threat where thunderstorms will train and drop a lot of heavy rain along that front up here in Michigan, northern Indiana, northern Illinois, northern Ohio. But a severe weather threat where we looked at before, again, more training possible of cells back into Arkansas, Kentucky, western Tennessee, southern Indiana, and Illinois. So watch out for some heavy rains there. There's your frontal boundary. Anywhere in from the Great Plains east, we're looking at potential showers and thunderstorms today. Also tomorrow, that threat will push east, but still have got plenty of energy working along the northern part of that ridge up in the northwest as we get on into, I should say, the central plains. As we get on into Thursday, we're going to see energy continuing to move up across the border, severe weather threat in the northeast to the mid-Atlantic, upper mid-Atlantic, with thunderstorms possible across the entire south ahead of that frontal boundary. And then looking out in toward Friday, our severe weather threat returns, but back into the plains that upper plains toward the Midwest, as we saw before. That's the portion of the country that's most at risk for thunderstorms and showers is going to be the upper northern tier of the nation, and then also down here in toward the deep south where we could see pop-up showers and thunderstorms, even a couple of snowflakes not out of the question. The higher elevations, the Cascades and the Rockies out here in the west on Friday. Temperatures, whoo, it's going to get hot, folks. 70s up here in the northeast, probably the only cool spot till you get to the northwest ahead of another frontal boundary working in out there. But 80s dominating the country until you get down here into Virginia and south. 90s this afternoon in the Piedmont of the Carolinas, down in toward Florida, over toward Texas. We go across the I-10. It's going to be hot, hot, hot down in here, folks. Hundreds in the desert southwest, the San Joaquin Valley, really hot, pushing 115 in spots out here toward Death Valley today. Tomorrow, heating up big time in the plains, in the lee of the Rockies, 90s and 80s, making it all the way up to the Canadian border, continuing hot in the desert southwest. Cool in behind this frontal zone just for a little bit as that moves on into the east on Thursday. Ahead of that, 80s and 90s, pushing 90, upper 90s in the northeast and New England areas. Lots of humidity too, so it's going to feel absolutely terrible across much of the eastern portion of the country. Look at this, hundreds making its way up into the plains as we get on into Friday. Lots of instability in this area too, hundreds in the desert southwest. But what's happening in the northwest? We've got a trough moving in. It's going to cool us off out there. A little bit of a lingering trough here in the northeast to provide a little bit more cool weather as we get on into Friday, and then warm in the southeast, 80s and 90s. That is your work week forecast. Let's take a look at the weekend and see what's going on there. And the weekend starts off with an absolutely horrible looking map if you don't like heat, folks. Hundreds, approaching 105 up here in South Dakota, folks. This is just incredible. Very, very hot out here in the plains. 80s and 90s across the entire eastern portion of the country, with the exception of the tip of the northeast, and then of course in the west where you guys were baking out there a week or two ago. Now you're cooling off with 60s and 70s, even 30s up here, and 20s up in the higher elevations of the Rockies as a big trough works in. But 80s, 90s everywhere else around except for the desert southwest where it's 100. And then on Sunday that heat just starts to build in the east. We get a little relaxation in the center of the country, but still very, very hot and humid. It's going to be muggy and nasty feeling across much of the eastern half of the country, and again cooler in the northwest. Taking a look at what's driving all of this, this is the jet stream pattern, way up high, about 250 millibars up, so that's pretty high, folks. So we're going to look here at how the wind pattern is flowing up there, because that kind of matters as to what happens at the surface. Big jet stream, you can see this just as well as I can. Big jet stream, strong winds kind of flowing like that around a big center of high pressure. Look at this big, here's your big high pressure ridge moving into the country. This is Saturday, folks. This is hot weather signal time for sure. And so as we go on out in time, look what happens. That ridge migrates slowly, maybe slowly to the east, but we're still centered here over the Mississippi Valley. Trough works into the west, big boundary between the cool and the heat. Along that boundary is where you find strong winds. Energy moving in that flow probably is going to provide some level of thunderstorm activity and severe weather threat along these areas out here from the Rockies up toward the northern plains, and then energy around that high pressure. Hey, soundings, we're not doing soundings today, thank you very much. Energy around that high pressure is going to kind of flow like this, and so you may see some MCSs, mesoscale convective complexes, just clusters of thunderstorms, move through that area as we go on out in time. But look at this, we're out into Monday of next week, Tuesday of next week, still got big ridging in the east, although the big high is broken down a bit, so we may see that back off a little bit, but still get on out into next Friday. Still big ridging in the east. Troughing is having a hard time pushing east just based on the flow pattern. And what do we expect out of this? So as we go on out into Friday, we're seeing showers and thunderstorms with that severe threat moving across the northern plains. A few pop-up showers in the southeast, little shower activity in the northwest as well. There's that MCS kind of moving around into northern New England as we get on into Saturday and Sunday. But look, Saturday should be nice and clear for much of the nation. So if you've got outdoor plans, Saturday looks pretty good except for the northeast and the northwest. See that Saturday afternoon. Then we get on into Sunday. Much the same story. May see a little bit of a wave kind of breaking through the northern plains, but other than that, it is going to be very, very nice for your weekend plans in terms of not being ruined by rainfall. Maybe ruined by heat, though. It's going to be very, very hot. There's your upper ridging as we take a look at your long-range forecast. So upper ridging just dominating the eastern half of the country, trough dominating the western half of the country as we move on out in time toward next week. Look at this. Thursday, Friday of next week, that ridge remains in place. Little bit of a trough signal coming here, so maybe we get a little bit of a break with some sort of troughing in, but it's not going to back temperatures all that much, but it may actually help to increase the precipitation as we get on down out in time. But really, all these bright colors mean, these orange colors mean we're going to see mostly above normal temperatures for much of the country. Look at this nastiness here. This is just disgusting. 24-hour max temperatures. So starting on Monday, these are the max temperatures. We're in the 90s all the way up in toward the mid-Atlantic, down in the southeast, across much of the plains. As we go on out in time, look at this. Boom, Tuesday, we're in the hundreds potentially in the Carolinas. This may be overdone a little bit, but still gives you an idea of where the core of the heat's going to be. Up and down to the East Coast, up to the eastern seaboard, out into the plains. Get on out into Wednesday. Look at this. We're trying to get some hundreds all the way up in here into New Jersey and upper 90s into the Delmarva region, up into toward Massachusetts. 104. What are we looking at? 104 here in Danville, Virginia. Give me a break. And it's not going to be that hot, I don't think, but still, it's going to be very hot. We get on out toward Thursday. The heat is just unrelenting. Hundreds again, all up and down the East Coast. Nasty, nasty, nasty. Friday, Saturday, sun. Is it ever going to get cool again? I don't know. That's 7 straight days of temperatures in the 90s or close to 100, and it's going to be humid. Take a look at the humidity. Look at this. We get on out in towards Saturday. I want to put, yes, so this is, make sure I'm in the right, yes, so this is Saturday. All of this green area that you're seeing here, very humid conditions. And so watch what happens as we go on out in time. You'll get to see this humidity just linger in the eastern part of the country under that ridge. So where it's hot, it's going to feel nasty. You'll get some mixing in the afternoon. You see kind of how it turns white a little bit. So as temperature heats up, the atmosphere dries out, you get a little bit of overturning winds. It's going to be a little bit windy. And so some of the drier air aloft will mix down in those areas, but still it's not going to feel all that great even with that mixing. It's going to feel hot, humid, muggy for the next several days once we start to get into the weekend. We're going to see that ridge really build in. And to that end, big signal for above normal temperatures in the east, particularly centered over the mid-Atlantic and northeast. Look at this. Below normal out west. Hawaii is kind of a mixed signal here in Alaska. Hawaii is going to be above normal as well. Precipitation outlook. West of the trough, probably going to see more precipitation as systems kind of move in around that, like we looked at before. Below normal, probably from the Mississippi east, is going to be below normal. Alaska and Hawaii look above normal. And folks, look at this. We had an X-class solar flare. We've been watching the sunspot. I've been talking to you about it, letting you know what's going to happen or what's likely to happen. Complex magnetism. We've got 2 areas of sunspots, one shot, then the other shot. X-class solar flare came off. That's kind of a neat view there. And so that's what's happening there. If we take a look, actually, we've had a strong impact to shortwave radio. This was centered over the Pacific Ocean in toward Hawaii. So a lot of people reported some signal loss with that. These X-class flares can do that, folks. And so that's what we're looking at. There it is right there on the spike. You see we've had several little flares come off. Look at this up here, X 1.2. They can go really, really high. Fortunately, this one wasn't all that strong, and it was quick. You see how it spiked and came down. Sometimes when they stay elevated for a while and are slow to come down, a coronal mass ejection comes out. That's where we really have problems. So not really looking at a lot more impacts from that, but we are watching those sunspots. The KP index indicating geomagnetic storm low. We're not worried about anything like along those lines. Solar wind density not spiking. So That's good news. Here's our solar spot complex. So 14 and 15. And if we click on one of these, we can click on that. It takes us down here. We can look at the magnetism. There it is. Positive, negative, negative, positive together. This is a delta class. This is complex magnetism, meaning we could see more flares from that area. Not seeing anything in the earthquake front. We did have a 5.4 offshore in El Salvador, 90 kilometers down, so probably not much effect from that, but nothing really going on the volcano side of things either, folks. That's the show for today. That is a good show. We've covered a lot of stuff. Hopefully it was informative to you. And that brings us to our Weather IQ answer, folks. And here it is. Probably you know this. I bet 90% of you know it, 80% maybe. I don't know. It just depends on how much you've watched TV. But what is the point on the Earth's surface directly above an earthquake called? Hypocenter, fault line, crust zone, or epicenter? And the answer is the epicenter. We always look for the epicenter to find the focus of the earthquake. That's where the damage is maximized, and then it diminishes out from the epicenter. So that's what that is. And now you know about earthquakes, and you need to know two more things so that you can tell people and impress them and sound impressive. So today marks the, I don't know how many years, I'm not going to count it up, but 1815, I guess that would be 110 years maybe, if I'm doing quick back of the math. I did count it up. Okay. Napoleon was defeated at Waterloo on June the 18th, 1815. And here's what it says about that. I looked this up this morning. Napoleon lost the decisive battle of Waterloo to the British and Prussian forces, ending his rule and concluding the Napoleonic War. So now you know that. And also, in 1983, Sally Ride becomes the first American woman in space. How about that? Well, that's it for today, folks. This is Cold Rain, as always, reminding you other stations run 24/7. We got you covered right here, right now. 4814. Have a wonderful day, folks. Take care. We'll see you back tomorrow.